Hey guys, so today we're going to talk a little bit about how wine is made. So when we talk about wine, a lot of the times we're talking sort of about the characteristics, the flavors, the texture, the body, but all of that is sort of an end result of how the wine is actually made. So how is wine made? Well, if we go back, wine has been being made for over 6,000 years. So of course, in the early days, it was just simple. The grapes were harvested and then they were usually crushed. And then sort of nature did its job, and the end result after a little bit was wine. Today, we have a lot of different techniques. We have a lot more innovative machinery that can actually kind of adjust that process and make the wine more of what we want in the end result. How is wine made? Well, we can break it down into sort of 5 steps. Our first step is going to be harvesting, so looking back at the grapes on the vines. You want to harvest your grapes when they're just the right amount of ripeness, because if they're too ripe, they're going to have too much sugar and they're going to end up being a sweet wine. Rather, if you harvest them a little bit too early, they're going to be too hard still, they're not going to be ripe, and they're going to produce a really tannic wine. So you have to get the right grapes, and then what happens is we take those back and we sort out sort of the bad clusters. So you want to throw out the rotten grapes and the unripe ones, and you get just the clusters you want. After that, you throw the grapes into a destemmer, which does exactly what it sounds like. It will help pull out all of the stems and the woody parts from the grape so that we don't get that harsh tannin in our wine. Our next step is going to be crushing. Okay, so crushing the grapes. This is sort of where white wine and red wine can sort of part ways, but essentially once you have destemmed your clusters, with white wine especially, you're going to just throw it in right to be pressed and crushed. You're going to have the juice separated from what we call the must, which is the leftover grape skins, and then that wine will be filtered and then gone to fermentation. However, if it's red wine, it might follow that process, or a lot of the times red wine, the whole cluster gets thrown in all together into a tank and it's allowed to start fermenting before we crush and separate the must from the juice. So this moment when you crush is actually sort of a key moment to defining the wine's color and also a lot of the different flavor characteristics. It's at this point that, for example, if a white wine is just crushed and separated from the must immediately, you get a light color wine. If you choose to crush but keep those grape skins with the wine, you get what a lot of people might call an orange wine. So you get a lot more color in that wine. But on to our third process. So the third step in making wine is going to be fermentation. And fermentation is, of course, where we actually get alcohol. It's where the sugars in the grape juices are converted into alcohol and CO2. And they do this through the use of yeast, okay? So what happens is either a winemaker might choose to use the natural or indigenous yeasts, which you will find, you might find them in nature, you might just find them in the area, on the grape skins, they just exist. Or a winemaker more commonly will choose to add a yeast that they have bought to the wine mixture, and what they do then is they let it sit and they let fermentation do its job. So fermentation can last just a few days, it can last a few weeks. Also, like I said, red wine might go through a different process. So red wine might be fermented first with all the grape clusters and then pressed and separated the must from the juice. Once the wine has been fermented as far as it wants to be fermented, first winemakers are going to probably have to sort of clear out the cloudiness of that wine. So the end result of fermentation, your wine is actually pretty cloudy. It's got a lot of dead yeast in there. And so winemakers will either add a clarifying agent, usually bentonite like the clay, or they'll let it sit and let all of that dead yeast settle to the bottom. Then it's time for aging. Not all wines are aged, okay? Some wines, after that, they are just put in the bottle and ready for sale. But a lot of wines, especially red wines, do tend to be aged. And when it comes to aging, there is so much room for sort of your own decision. So you can choose to age in stainless steel, in oak, in amphora, in cement vats. You can choose to then age in used oak, in new oak, in barrels about this big and barrels huge. It's really up to you. And then of course with the oak you could also choose Slavonian oak, you could choose French oak, you could choose American. There's so many choices, and each choice that you make will affect the end result of the wine. Certain wines have rules by law of how you have to age them, others it's completely up to the winemaker. But aging will happen from a few months to a few years. Again, it depends on the wine. And once that happens, it is time for bottling, putting our wine in the final bottle ready for sale. So the wine will be added to the bottle, they'll add a cork, seal it all up, and then also some wines get aged further in the bottle, whereas other wines might just be put out for sale right away. When they come out for sale, it's then up to the consumer if you want to age it further in your cellar or you want to pop that bottle open and drink it right away. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that it gave you a general overview of how wine is made. If you did enjoy it, it would mean so much if you drop us a like, subscribe, and follow along for more awesome wine content. Thanks so much, guys.